Hey everyone, welcome to WittCode, where in this video I'm going to show you how to connect a Create React application to Express. So we'll have Express running in the back end, which we can see right here, and then React running in the front end, which we can see right here. And so specifically, our Express application is going to send over a JSON array of users, and our React application will parse it, and what we will output is just simply a list here of two users. So username WittCode and username Mike with the ages, and these are both supplied by a user's route here inside our Express application, and they are parsed and then displayed in our React application here. But so this is what we're going to be building. So to get started, just create a new folder with no files. But so before we start, I'm just going to give a quick overview of what React and Express are. So what is React? React is a front-end JavaScript library for building websites, and it is commonly used for building single-page applications. On the other hand, Express is a backend framework for Node, and it is designed for building websites and web applications in the backend and making it easier. But so all I have set up right now is just a folder on Visual Studio Code with no files in it or everything. The first thing we are going to do now is create a Create React app by using the Create React App tool. So Create React App is a fast way to create a React application, as it sets up the development environment for us, allowing us to focus on development without having to learn about build tools, because Create React App under the hood uses Babel and Webpack. But to use Create React App, we have to have Node version 14 or higher and npm version 5.6 or higher installed. But if those are true, all we need to do to create a React app is we just run npx create React app, and then what we want to name it is client. So while this runs real quick, just let me say what npx is. So the package tool npx stands for Node Package Execute, and it comes pre-installed with npm version 5.2.0 and higher. And npx is an npm package runner that allows us to execute any packages from the npm registry without installing them. And the command npx create React app client, which we just ran, creates a React project with the environment already set up and places it all inside a folder called client. Awesome, but there we go. So that always takes longer than I remember it. But after that's done, what we can do is what we can see our React application is now inside this folder called client. And if we click in here to run our React application, if we look inside package.json, we can see under scripts, we can see start, which will run React scripts start. And so if we want to run this command, first let's change directories into our client directory, and then we just run npm start. And what this will do is it will start our React application on port 3000. And npm start specifically will run this script here inside our package.json file. But essentially running npm start here will just get our React application up and going on port 3000. And so let me show you what it should look like. We've got over here our React application. We can see we're running on localhost 3000, which is awesome. So that was our first step done. So now let's create our Express app to work as our backend. And to do this, we'll first navigate to our project's top structure in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to create, I can just click here, a folder, and we're going to call this server. So essentially this will be our React application, and this will be our Express application. And before we do anything more, actually I'm going to close out of this, and what I'm going to do is cd backwards, which you can do by cd ... And then I'm going to cd or change directory into our server here. And what we want to do first is we want to initialize our Express application. And so we're going to do this by creating a separate package.json file in our server folder to keep track of our server-side dependencies. And so to create a package.json file, we use the command npm init, and I'm also going to pass -y, which will essentially provide all the defaults for setting up our package.json file. Once again, just make sure that you are running npm init inside the server. Then let me expand this a bit, and we can see these are all the defaults it will have supplied into our server folder for our package.json file. So now this is our package.json file on our server. And now, while we're still in the server directory, let's actually install Express with npm, because Express is simply just a npm package. So we're going to do npm install Express. And this will hopefully be quicker than running npx create React app, which I'm sure it will be, but you never know. There we go. Awesome. And now something we also want to install is nodemon. So I'm going to do npm install nodemon. And what nodemon is it's a command line interface tool that watches the file system for changes. And when it detects a change, it restarts the server with our changes. So we'll simply install it by using npm install nodemon. And we're also going to tag on -g. And this will install nodemon on our system path so we can use it basically in any future project, not just this project here that we're working on. So install this. And I already have it installed, but no harm in just doing this again. And now let's actually create our Express, or create an Express application. And we're going to do this inside our server folder. We're going to create a file called index.js. And what we will do in here first is we're just going to require Express with the common JS require method. And then after requiring Express, we need to create an Express application. And this is done by calling the function return from require Express. So, and we will capture this in a variable called app. So all we do is create an Express application by running this method that was returned from here, and we just capture it inside a variable called app. And now let's create a route to handle incoming requests to our Express application at the path -API. And so we're just going to do it in here, API, and just type in -API. And so adding this -API to the path is not necessary, but it does show that we want our Express application to act as an API, giving our React application data and essentially just other API related tasks. But then in our middleware function, or callback essentially, we will do request and response, and we will just say response.send hello world from Express, and save this. And now the next thing we should do is let's have our Express application listen for incoming requests on port 1234. And so this port should be different from the port that our React application is listening on. And by default, our React application is listening on port 3000. So we are going to listen on the port 1234 with the method listen. And now let's ensure that our Express application is working properly by running our index.js file and then visiting localhost 1234-API. So I'm just going to run in here nodemon index.js. We have no way of knowing it's running, I guess the nodemon stuff, but we didn't put any kind of method in here to let us know. But what we can do is I'm going to go my second monitor here, and I'm going to do localhost 1234, and then also -API, and then we get hello world from Express. So if I bring this over here, I just typed in localhost 1234-API, and we're returned hello world from Express, which corresponds to this right here. We access this route, and we just send back this response. Let me move this back out of the way. But now let's actually do some more setup. And what I want to do is I want to create a folder inside our Express application called routes. This will hold a route inside it called users. So users.js, and it'll essentially act as our users route. And this users.js file, what it will specifically do is return a JSON array of users that we can then parse in the front end of our, aka our React application. But first, let's require Express, and then let's create a router object. So Express, I'll go over this in a second. Express here, and then we're going to do const router equals Express dot router like this. And so an Express router essentially just helps us create better route handlers and helps us organize our code. So I've got an Express series that I'm working on that will have more information on this, so you can check that out when I release it. But for now, that's essentially what a router does. And so what we're going to do is we are going to add a route to this router object. Sorry, let me call this router, and we're going to add a route to it with a HTTP GET method, and then the request and response. And this router object here will return a JSON array or a JSON object containing a JSON array of users. And so the way we're going to do this is we're just going to say response.json, and then we're going to pass in an array of objects that will have two properties. One, a username, which will be WittCode here, and then age, which will be 26. And then we're going to have another object, and a username, another user. This username will be Mike, and the age will be 32. And then, of course, what we want to do with this router object is we want to export it. So this essentially makes this, this page here accessible to the rest of our application. And what did I do up here? We don't, well, that's another way to do it, but we're just going to leave it like this. So we've got this router object, but now we need to add it to our Express application, which, if you can remember, is this represented in this variable app here. And the way to register it is we are going to register it as global middleware. You'll see more of this in a second, but we're going to first make a variable called users, which will be our, what was it, .dash routes, which will be our users route, which is here. And then we're going to register it as global middleware, and what it will be is on dash API dash users, and then we'll pass in users here. So now, whenever localhost 1234 dash API dash users is accessed, the JSON object that we created here will be returned as a response. And of course, that will be what we'll parse in our, up here in our React application. So now let's go over to React and let's create a users React component. So what I'm going to do is go into our source file here, and let's create a folder called components, which will house all our components. And one of these components will be just called user.js. So this component here will send a request to our Express backend at dash API dash users, that route, and then parse the data and display it. And so what we're going to do first is we're going to import component from the React library like this. And then we're going to use class syntax, and we're going to say user, and we're going to extend this component class, because this will give us the React lifecycle methods. And one of these methods is render. And what we want to do inside this render method, so when our component is rendered, we want to return a div, right now, just a div with an h1 tag that says users component, basically just to make sure that this is working correctly. And then, of course, we need to export this, export default users. And export default is basically a way in JavaScript to export a function, class, something singular like that, and it'll export it to the rest of our application. But now let's display this users component. And so to do that, we're going to access, not this, but we're going to access app.js, and we're going to remove all this code in here, and we're just going to, all we're going to return, and the reason you might see returned with parentheses like this so you can return over multiple lines, but we're just going to return our users component like that. And so now let's revisit localhost 3000 again and make sure that it's working. So bring this back over here. Let's revisit. Oh, I need to actually run the server again before I do that. So let's cancel out this. Let's change directories back into our client, because this is our React application now. And we'll run npm start again, which will run our start script in our package.json file. And there we go. Not as nice as the old one, but we just have sitting here our users component, which is of course coming from here, where we're exporting this user component from within here. And now we're going to start connecting our React application to our Express application. And this is going to be done inside package.json, but not the one on our client, but the one, or not the one on our server, but the one in our client. And so the way to actually do this is with the key, or do this with create React app, is with the key proxy like this. And so essentially a proxy is a server that is an intermediate between a client requesting a resource and a server providing a response. And what we want our proxy to be is http://localhost 1234. Because if you remember, this is the port that our Express application is running on. So in a production environment, you'd of course want to change this to be the URL to your site. But for this, it's just localhost. But so adding the key proxy tells our React development server to proxy any unknown requests to the URL provided. So here, our React application will proxy requests to our Express application, which is running on port 1234. But now let's save this and let's actually request data from our Express application. So as our React and Express applications are now connected, we can make requests to our Express application from our React application. And to get started, let's add a constructor to our users component. And to do that, we just pass constructor. We're also going to be passing some props to it. And in this constructor, we will keep track of the state of a variable called users. And of course, first we have to pass it to the superclass, our props, like this. And then we're going to use this .state, and we're going to set the variable users equal to an empty array. So this variable users here will be filled with the users returned from our Express users route, which I believe, yeah, right here. So it'll be filled with these users that this route returns, which is a JSON array. Let's go back in. And so just real quick, we would be using the React useState hook, but hooks can only be used in functional components. And the component we created here is a class component, and the useState hook is a hook that allows us to have state variables in functional components. But on the other hand, in a class component, we can keep track of state by setting this.state equal to an object containing the variables we want to keep state information of. So essentially this is just saying, throughout the use of this component, let's keep track of a variable called users. But now let's focus on contacting our Express application. And so, in other words, let's fill up our user state variable with the users at our Express users route. And what we want to do is contact our Express application's user route after our React component is mounted. And to do that, we use the lifecycle method component did not catch, but component did mount, like this. And so what is component did mount? Well, component did mount is invoked immediately after a component is inserted into the DOM. Specifically, it is called during the mounting phase of the React lifecycle, which is basically after the component is rendered. And we want to contact the Express API inside component did mount because this ensures our data won't be loaded until after the component is rendered. And so after our component has mounted, let's make a request to our Express application's users route by using the method fetch. And what we want to do is we want to call fetch to -API -users, and essentially our React application won't know where this is, so it'll look in here at this proxy and see, oh, localhost 1234, and essentially tag on -API -users, which is this route here, which will then of course return this and then bring this back here. But so also real quick, what is fetch? Well, fetch is a node module that makes it easy for making HTTP requests. The HTTP request we are making here is to our Express application's users route, and fetch returns a promise that is resolved into a response. So because it returns a promise, if it's successful, it will return a response, which we will just call res. And then we get the JSON data from this response, so this response will is essentially what was sent from here, this response.json, and we get the JSON data from this response by using the method .json. So what we want to return is response.json, and this is a method, this .json is a method from the JavaScript response interface, and this also returns a promise. So we want to call .then again, because we're just assuming it's going to be successful essentially, and this promise will be resolved into an array containing our users. So let's call the variable it responds with users, leave it like this for now. And so with these users, we want to change the state of our user's state variable to contain the array of users by using the method setState. So within here, we use this dot set state, and we want to set the state of our users variable to be this JSON array of users, like this. And let's play that here. And then real quick, we just have a warning, just because we are not using, we're not using this logo. I'm gonna think of it, that's the only one. So if I get rid of that, okay, that just looks better. But now in our users component, what we want to do inside our render method is we don't want to just return an h1 now saying this. What we want to return, or even a div for that matter, we want to return an unordered list, so ul. And what we're going to do in here, we're going to use these brackets to write JavaScript code in here. And we'll do this dot state dot users. Oh, what did I do here? Dot users dot map. And we can use dot map because this is users contains an array, because remember we set it up here to an array. And what we want to do is for each user, which is only 2 of them, we want to, I can go in here, we want to create a list item, or li, with username like this, and the username will be, the username will be user dot username like this, and then a comma, and we're going to have age equal to user dot age. And we're actually just going to return this directly, so we're going to have, instead of those curly braces, we're just going to use this and get rid of that semicolon. And now we can save this, and essentially this is all we needed to do. So we'll get these one more time, we'll call fetch here. Our React application won't know where this is. It'll go to this proxy, which ends up being localhost-api-users, which is here because when we were creating, we registered this as a route to our Express application at -api-users, which then returns this JSON array. And then in our user component, we are going to get the users. We're tracking the state of this user's variable. We set that to be what's returned. And then we just loop through them and just print out username and then age, which corresponds to user.username here and user.age. But let's go back here. And so now let's open up a second terminal, which I believe I can do like this. And in this one, we want to run our Express application. So in here, we'll do nodemon, not server, but index.js. And so that's running. So we have our Express or front end here, and we have our Express backend here, and our React front end here. And now let's see what happens when we access this. So back in here, we will call localhost 3000. And so refreshing this, it seems like we got an error. So if we go into the console, uncaught and promise, unexpected token, JSON at position 0. So let's go in and see what we can see in here. And so the issue is we just had to restart our React application. So if you're facing into this, you should just go back into here and just cancel out this and just run npm start again. And once this is run, we can see everything printed out correctly. But there we have it. So having React as the front end and Express as the back end for a website is very powerful. So I hope you found this video useful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll try and get back to you. But besides that, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing and liking, and I'll see you in the next video.